Alright guys, what's going on? So today I want to talk about the strongest guns in custom Robo and the most meta relevant ones. Pretty much to give like newer players to the game an understanding of what they should be using in tournament and what they should be prepping against if they want to take this game a little bit more seriously. And so there are 8 of these things, and let's just step right into it. The first gun I want to talk about, hold on, I got technical difficulties. Okay, the first one I want to talk about is the ion gun. And this definitely is a really good gun to go for if you're a new player. And there are a couple advantages to the ion. The first one is that the hit stun is very long on this, so you can sort of get the opponent trapped and just keep hitting him like that. And you see I got 208 damage, so that was pretty good. A lot of guns in this game have the problem to where if you don't knock down, then your opponent actually has frame advantage, which means that they can sometimes punish you for shooting them if you're not positioned well. And ion definitely doesn't have that issue, so because of that you can really get right up in their face and just shoot it, and it'll be good even against something like Metal Bear that you can't knock down. The other advantage that the ion gun has, you can see it goes really quite long distance, and so even in a matchup where your opponent is trying to keep away from you, the ion gun is not going to be dead weight because you just don't have the range to compete. Okay, so those are pretty much the advantages of the gun, but it's got some disadvantages too. So you can see that even though the bullets go for like a really long way, they actually travel pretty slowly. So even though you can fight like at full screen, you really don't want to be doing that with this gun because it's much easier to dodge that way. So you really kind of want to be playing the more of like the close to mid-range game with this, is what you want to be doing a lot of times. The type of builds that are going to benefit from ion gun are like metal grappler is probably the most common one that I've seen. That's definitely what Go for Broke used to like to use with it. And the nice thing about metal grappler with ion gun is that you can sort of just agree to take trades and you can shoot it out and pretty much always win because of the fact that it has so much hit stun. So like if I get in his face and he shoots me at the same time that I shoot him, like we'll both take damage, but then because he's stunned for so long, I can keep shooting him back. Exactly like what just happened there. I can always just keep shooting him and get advantage state from our trade, and so that's what makes metal grappler really good. I also have been starting to like personally to use, what's it called, the strike vanisher, because you can approach really well, and whenever you get in close then it's a lot harder to dodge these real slow bullets. So you're gonna win with ion gun in matchups like versus splash, because if you get into this position like right here, this kind of spacing, the splash gun will want to shoot their thing and you can just go for the trade and usually win. Ion's probably going to be good versus flame as well, but you're going to lose against like shotgun or anything that can knock you down in one hit is going to be a threat, because they can punish this long end lag that you have whenever you shoot it out. See, it's kind of, on one hand it's unsafe to throw out your gun like that just because there's so much lag at the end of it, but it's usually compensated for pretty well just because of how the shots have so much homing on them. So if they try and punish you in your end lag, and since they're out for so long, a lot of times they wind up trading with the last hit of it, and then you get the confirm the more ions. So yeah, other builds that I would use with ion gun, let me think about it. I think Goblinoid uses Funky Big Head with ion gun, but what doesn't he use Funky Big Head with? And I already talked about Strike Vanisher, so I think that about covers this one. Let me get on to the next gun that I want to talk about. Okay. The next gun is Flame, and Flame, this is a really good anti-approach tool. This could be, I could see this being potentially higher on this list. I could see a lot of these actually being potentially higher than when I have them, or lower. But anyway, Flame is really good for keeping away because of how active it is. There's a lot of multi-hits there, and the bullets just sort of linger. And interesting to note about Flame Gun is that if you get right up in your opponent's face, oh my god, just let me do it. If you get in your opponent's face, you can see that did 53 damage. We'll let him wake up. It's got a tipper hitbox, so if you hit with a tip, it does like almost double damage. So in some sense, it's kind of skill-based, but if you go for the long-range hitbox, then it's a lot more likely it'll be avoided. So there's some risk and reward associated with that. Flame is going to be mostly beating out close-range guns that want to get in your face, such as shotgun or stun gun are the main ones that come to mind that people actually use, because it's really hard to approach whenever this active thing is here. But the other nice thing about Flame is that it also outranges and outdamages the splash gun. So they both kind of have that aspect to them where they can keep away, but Flame has the added benefit of winning in a splash matchup, with the downside of not being quite as good versus the counter picks that specifically is going for. So you can see right here that I have Flame in with the Lightning Sky. This is kind of a signature build that Sulphur Auburn likes to use, and he's been using it for a long time to great effect. And you can just sort of drive by and shoot your flamethrower out, and then it's kind of difficult to punish the landing because you have the lingering flame hitbox, and that's what makes it good. I'm not sure for a newer player if I would really recommend doing this, just because you can get punished a lot for landing if you don't land in a smart place. So like if you're also playing against people that are less experienced with the game, I think that you can land for free a lot, and this is going to do a lot of work for you. But the higher of a skill your opponent is, it's going to be much more difficult to utilize the Lightning Sky. It's also very good at if you're above your opponent, connecting, because of you can see how the bullets kind of fall down and they have some gravity and weight to them. So I think that this is really good with Aerial Beauty as well. And who is it? Sly maybe? Somebody on Discord uses it with Aerial Beauty to great effect. And I think it's also good with Funky Big Head as well. I've seen it used on Strike Vanisher, but I don't know if I agree with that because of how slow the bullets come out. It's a little bit hard to really approach with it, in my opinion, because if you get here at this kind of distance and you try to shoot, a lot of times your opponent's just going to be able to get their bullet to connect first if they have like needle or sniper or some other type of gun where it travels faster. So you can sometimes struggle to approach with this, but it's not as bad as some guns are. Another thing to know about whenever you use flame is that it's pretty good on hit. It's maybe hard to showcase here because I keep knocking him down. But like if you hit your opponent with a flame gun, if they're metal ox or something, and you don't knock them down, you're going to be at frame disadvantage, I believe, but it's not directly punishable, so you can get away. Okay, I think I pretty much have talked about everything I need to talk about with flame, so let's move on to the next one. Oh no, did I just save the state? Yeah, I saved that state. Oh crap, okay. So let me just do this on the fly because I accidentally saved my state instead of loading. The next gun I was wanting to talk about is Splash Gun. And while I'm selecting my stuff, I'll just try and discuss this a little bit. Splash Gun, as I already mentioned, has a lot of similarities with where's the dolphin? Okay, Splash Gun has a lot of similarities with Flame, being that it's really good at keeping away. With a Splash Gun, you can just like spam the B button and it'll keep on firing. And so there's very low end lag on that, and because the bullets linger, this is what makes it so ridiculous to be able to try and approach against. Like you really can't whiff punish it, and if the opponent is afraid that you want to approach on them, you can just spam it like that. And so this gun is kind of ridiculous. It also has a great amount of hit stun on it, to the point to where you can actually get this combo off for massive damage, as you can see. And so this is why this setup here with the metal bear is referred to as Splash Mountain. It's very infamous because you can just run in, get some hits, and then deal the damage. I like to use the crescent with this, which is not something people usually use, I think, but it allows you to get this other type of combo where if you get your bomb confirmed, then you can get your combo that you want anyway, because Splash versus an airborne opponent, it'll knock him down and still leave him with enough hit stun to get hit back at the tackle. And you can also just throw some dolphins to combo after your crescent P. But more specifically about the gun. So this is going to have a lot of really similar matchup spread to Flame, but it's more polarized to the point to where, like, the guns it beats, it really beats them hard. The stun gun or the shotgun has very little chance of dealing with this, and so if you're going to use one of those, you have to have a Robo in the back that can handle Splash. So maybe like a Hornet or an Ion or something like that. But it also, I may have said this, I don't remember. It also is another one that's kind of feels difficult to approach with because of how slow the bullets kind of travel. The up close hitbox, they actually go pretty quick, but then after that they kind of ooze forward slowly. And so you're going to be struggling to approach with this guy, I would say. Anyway, I think, I'm not really sure if this actually is better than Flame or not. Conceptually, I feel like Flame has a better matchup spread because it also is able to beat Splash on top of those other guns, but Splash is just what's used more common, which is why I put it up this high. For other options with Splash Gun, let's see, I've definitely seen it with Halberd, but I think Halberd sucks. I would not ever use it with Halberd. I would probably use Glaive instead. And I've seen it with Funky Big Head, which Funky Big Head is kind of different because you're not usually doing splash into collision to get your damage, and so like it can be hard to get the damage that you want to have, because if you see, like if you just hit him with a splash and nothing else, that did 43 damage, like you really are not doing the damage that you want to if you only use splash. So you can have that struggle to use Funky Big Head, but the nice thing about using Funky Big Head is that you don't really have to worry about getting hit by your opponent's bombs or pods that much. So it's like really stupid trying to be able to actually hit Funky Big Head with splash. So I think that is like a super underrated build, and if you want to use splash gun, I would recommend giving it a try. I also think Aerial Beauty is really good as well. Okay, let's talk about the next one. I'll be sure to load the state this time. What are we on, number 4? Okay, so I've discussed this gun a little bit already, and it's the stun gun. Now this gun is absolutely nuts because this is another gun that has a long amount of hit stun, and you can get so much damage. Notice off of one stray hit, it's just about 200 damage, and you can even get more damage than this because since we play in tag battle as our main format, there's like a glitch, I guess you would say, that can happen called a down cancel, to where if you're trying to switch your robos while you're getting hit with a multi-hit move, then it'll sometimes force you to stand up but not switch your robo, like after being knocked down. So if you're spamming the stun like this and they're knocked down and they time their tag incorrectly, then you actually can get a second round of 200 damage on them and just like delete their health bar. We play with only 700 HP, so that's literally over half of your health gone just for an accidental down cancel. And so that's what makes this gun like super ridiculous to fight against. And not only do you get that good damage, but it's similar to splash levels of end lag, where you can just sort of throw it out, and if you miss, like, okay, no big deal, I can just teleport away. I only see stun used on Strike Vanisher, and it's most commonly used on this set I have here with Halberd, or sometimes, what's that other one called? I don't use Javelin, but Halberd, in my opinion, Halberd sucks. I would not ever recommend anybody to use Halberd because the collision on him is so laggy that if your opponent just tags after getting knocked down by it, then you will always get punished for it, unless if they're not able to tag at the moment. So I don't recommend using Halberd. I would use Glaive instead. But anyway, for matchups with the stun gun, well, I already mentioned some bad matchups that it has. As far as good matchups, you know, it's honestly hard for me to talk about that because I don't play stun gun personally. I would think any time your opponent has like a laggy gun, like maybe Hornet or potentially Ion or something like that, that allows you to get in and punish with the stun for all your massive damage, that's probably going to be a good matchup. And versus, what's that called? The sniper rifle, that's probably good too because of how long the end lag is. Anything where you're going to have a good time going in and going ham, that's what you want to be playing against. So stun, that's a pretty ridiculous gun, and if you want to do a lot of damage really fast, That's pretty much what you want to be using. So now we'll be on to the next gun I want to talk about. I think it was number 5. Yes. Okay, so the next one is shotgun. And this is very similar to the stun gun in a lot of aspects. It has slightly more range on it, which Beerus wanted to say that it was not true that shotgun had more range, but I tested it, and it's definitely true that shotgun has more range. And the bullet travels very fast. It's not as fast as stun, to where it's like basically immediate, but it's still faster than most of the guns in the game, which allows it to be very good at close quarters. And now you lose out on some damage whenever you use shotgun compared to whenever you use stun. See, that was 142 versus 190, or potentially like 400 if they down cancel. So you do lose out on some damage, but the main thing you gain from using shotgun, and why in my opinion is just a better gun than stun, is that you knock them down instantly, which you would think isn't that big of a deal, because when you hit them with stun, they're going to get knocked down eventually. But it matters a lot more than you would think, because let's say if they have ions out on the field and you hit them with stun, you might get hit by like a stray ion or a stray glider, or if they're using Sword Storm and they have one of those up in the air, you can get punished during the middle of your combo for trying to hit them with stun gun, and because you knock them down with shotgun, you'll instantly break any of their bullets that are already on the field. So I just think that the fact that this gun is such a no-nonsense gun, and it's harder to counterplay, I just would much prefer to play this in tournament, even though I don't have the threat of randomly taking out 400 damage. This just seems more reliable to me. So you're going to be using this on the same types of robots that you're going to be using the stun on, which is going to be Strike Vanisher pretty much only. Yeah, you could, I guess you could use it on Little Raider, because I have seen people use Little Raider with wide jump and stun, so I would think that they could just do the same thing with shotgun, but I wouldn't really recommend that kind of setup. I think that if you want to approach your opponent, then you always pretty much want to have the teleport dash. And as for matchups this guy is bad against, well, I already discussed those, the Splash and the Flame. Flame is a lot more doable, because you can sometimes get around it and punish it, but Splash, you almost never have an opportunity to use your shotgun. And so if you're using either one of these two short range builds, I recommend this bomb and pod setup I have here, where it's like wave plus waning arc, because it's really effective at pressuring mid-range, and it can go just outside of the range of something like a Flame or a Splash. And even though you don't get like that much damage by going for these, the fact that you can cover the screen and at least have some way to be able to interact whenever you have this short range gun is huge. It makes it to where you're not just a dead weight in certain matchups, although you still will lose pretty handily to like Dower Head Splash, because like I mentioned before, when they get so high in the air, you just can't interact with your bomb and pod anymore, which is unfortunate. Anyway, moving on to the next thing. Load state, I believe this is number 6. Okay. So the next best gun I want to talk about is Sniper. And maybe it's contentious for me to put it up this high, but I think it's very good. Sniper is a strong fucking gun that's going to do like over 100 damage whenever you hit with it. Like, look at that. That's absolutely insane. So something you got to know about whenever you're using sniper is that this gun is very minus on hit, to where he could have just punished me for hitting him right there. You really want your opponent to be in the air whenever you hit them with this gun, because there's a knockback that'll send them super far away to where they can't punish you, which is kind of hard for me to be able to showcase that versus the CPU. But if they're grounded, then they pretty much go nowhere, and they can punish you for it. But if they're in the air, then you won't really get punished. An important thing also to know is if you shoot from the air, as you can see, there's a lot of startup to whenever I press the B button, and then whenever the bullet comes out, which honestly is really needed, because this gun would be busted if it came out immediately on the ground and in the air. Because whenever you're up really high like this, you have a vantage point of the whole entire stage. That'd just be crazy. But anyway, it's important to know, if you shoot it from the air, there's going to be lag. If you shoot it from the ground, there's not going to be lag. If you shoot your opponent while they're on the ground, then you're going to get punished. And if you shoot the opponent while they're in the air, you're not going to get punished. So I guess you would say this is kind of a high skill cap type of weapon, because you got to have all this knowledge to play it. But it's still very good, just because of the speed and the distance and the damage that it does. Whenever you're playing sniper, you're going to want to really know how many bullets it takes to knock down every Robo class. So versus Shining Fighters, you can see it takes 2 to knock down. It also is 2 versus Strike Vanisher. It also, I believe, is 2 versus Trick Flyer, and also is 2 versus Funky Big Heads and Chicken Heart as well. But versus Little Raiders and Lightning Sky and Aerial Beauty, you can knock all those down in one hit, which makes this gun like pretty decently good in those matchups, because you don't have to worry about having all this specific knowledge about who's in the air and how many hits it takes to knock down. You'll just always knock them down. And then lastly, the Metal Grappler, it actually takes 3 hits to knock down a Metal Grappler with Sniper. So you really want to make sure that you know all of that and you're paying attention to their down meter whenever you're playing this gun, because that's important to know. For me personally, I always like to use Acrobat Bomb with Sniper Rifle, because of being able to cancel the long end lag that it has. Just allows you to remain a little bit more safe. But most people feel like in the community you do not want to be losing an actual bomb. So this setup I have here is the Metal Bear with the Wave and Waning combo like I was using before. And this is a setup like what Goblinoids likes to use. And it's pretty neat because you can pressure with your bomb and pod and force them to try and get away with their burst mobility options, and then just punish them with Sniper. Punishment is like mainly what this gun is used for. You don't really go in with it because you can't knock them down. And if you whiff, then it's going to be super laggy and you probably get punished. But because the rounds travel so fast that if they, like, you're just so good at being able to punish landings and that sort of thing. So you want to play this gun if you're trying to have a more bait and punish style of play, I guess you might say. You can use Sniper on a whole lot of different builds. So I've used it on Aerial Beauty with pretty good effect before, and I've seen it used a lot with Strike Vanisher. People pretty much just put anything on Strike Vanisher, and the same thing with metal grappler. You can pretty much take any gun that's like decent and put it on strike vanisher or metal grappler, and it probably will work for you. Just as a side note. But I think I also very commonly see it on grappler, and most likely that's because grappler, he wants to stay grounded more of the time to be able to take advantage of that, and also he can get the more advantageous trades in the close quarters scenarios, to where maybe you shoot your gun and then they punish you for it, but then you can shoot them back because it takes so much to knock them down. But I think that's pretty much all I really have to say about sniper rifle. Oh, one last thing is that it's kind of hard to approach as sniper. So if you have a disadvantage, then like if your opponent has more health, then that kind of sucks sometimes having to deal with. And now on to the next one. So this is the Hornet. This set has a name called B-Bear. And you definitely, if you want to play competitive, you cannot go into any tournament without having a strategy in mind for how you want to deal with B-Bear, because it's just, I would say, easily the most popular and common setup that you're going to run into for tournament play. I like using it with the acrobat bomb like this, because you can mix up your landings and not just get punished every time you whiff. But a lot of people don't use that. They use what's it called, the Wyvern bomb instead, which I don't think is that good, but a lot of people do. So it's, I guess, whatever your preference is. Usually they have like a long range pod on it, like Dolphin, or maybe like a diving, or sometimes wave. It varies a lot, but the main thing is the Hornet and the Bear are so good at just out trading everything in the game. As you can see, if you get the close-up B shot, that's 221 damage, and that's just like stronger than literally any other legal gun. The only gun I know of that's stronger in the game is like X Laser, but we don't use that. So advantages of the Bs, and there are a lot of them. One of them is like the huge damage that I already showed you, that can just like swing a match that was going poorly all of a sudden into your favor, which is pretty unfair. That was a lot more significant whenever we didn't have the neutral start rule, because you could just walk up to your opponent while they're in the cube and have a free 200 health lead. Other advantages are, look at that hitbox. Like, that's absolutely nuts. It attacks a gargantuan horizontal space, and so that makes it really extremely good versus the Lul Raiders, because their jumping like sucks. The other thing about it is that, since what usually will happen is that one B will hit and then another B will hit and another one, it'll create this sort of stun lock where they're in hit stun for a long time. So while one Hornet doesn't really have very good hit stun and you can get punished for it, if they sort of get gangbanged by all of them, then they're going to get whooped. This definitely is a nuts gun, and like one of the best by a long shot, I would say. But the weaknesses the Hornet has, which are very manageable, is that it kind of has bad vertical tracking, especially if your opponent is above you in the air. They go out in like the V shape, and if they're like higher in altitude than you, what often will happen is they'll get hit by the first V, and then the knockback on that when your opponent's in the air is very similar to like I showed off before, the splash gun, to where it knocks them down, and then the opponent will escape the combo of getting whooped by all of the Bs together. And so if your opponent is like significantly higher than you in altitude, then You don't really want to shoot the bees because they'll just get punished for it pretty badly. And so that makes them kind of hard to deal with, funky big heads and aerial beauties. But you definitely still can do it. It's just a matter of having to play smart. As for other options with the Hornet gun, honestly, I really don't see it ever used on anything that's not metal bear. I suppose, like, you could probably use it on Strike Vanisher and it would be fine. You probably could use it on Chicken Heart and it would be fine. Although Chicken Heart's not like very meta in general, but I think he's decent. You probably can get Collision into Hornets and that would work out. But you mainly only want to be using this on Metal Bear if you're trying to play what's meta. Okay, before I really get into what the last and, in my opinion, the best gun is, I want to give some honorable mentions. So, shout out to Sword Storm. Goblinoid thinks that's broken, but I think it sucks. It's pretty much a gimmick. What else? V-Laser, Zach loves to use that, and I think it's got a lot of potential, but it hasn't really shown its worth in tournament, in my opinion. It kind of just, like, the bullets travel a little bit too slow, and they don't knock anything down. It's like the sniper rifle, but weaker and slower bullets. The fact that you have the V-shot seems like it could be really, really good, but like I said, it hasn't seen enough tournament results for me to want to include it on this list. Homing Star, I think, is honestly better than some of the guns on here, but it doesn't really get used that much from my experience, to warrant putting it on a list of meta-relevant parts. Zach loves Starshot. It pretty much sucks. As a trend, Zach just likes to make shitty parts look good. Okay, I can't think of any other honorable mentions worth really going into. The next and final, and in my opinion the best gun in the game, if you haven't guessed it by now, is the needle gun. And it might be contentious for some people that I put needle as the best gun in the game, but it's just so versatile. You pretty much, the sets that you see used with needle gun is like basically everything in the game. You see it used on Aerial Beauty, you see it used on, I like it on Shrike, you see it used on Metal Grappler, Strike Vanisher. Like Naga Strike, that was his main thing in the game, was Strike Vanisher, Needle, and Go for Broke uses this setup that I've got here, which is like Needle plus Aerial Beauty, and I put my own twist on it with the Cockroach Pod to make it easier to deal with the Little Raider matchup. But this more or less is what Go for Broke's main setup was. Anyway, this gun, the versatility that it has, is really what does it for me in cementing it as the best slot. It'll go full screen if you need to fight at that range. That's not really the best range for it. You want to be more in the mid to close range. If you see, the lag that it has is very little compared to a lot of the other guns that we covered on here. And its combo potential is good because you can just like, well, I missed out on my combo a little bit because I got hit by his bomb. But you can combo a lot of stuff into and out of it, so like the damage is pretty decent. It's not high compared to something like the shotgun or sniper or Hornet, but it's definitely better than like say splash gun. The knockdown is like pretty good to where you'll be able to knock down basically anything that's not a metal grappler in one hit. And versus metal grapplers too, you can do this combo where it's like, if it'll let me get him, where it's like the bomb into needle and then you still will knock them down, which is really nice. And just overall, it's got a little bit of everything that you want in a gun. It's got the range, it's got the I don't know, the power's a little bit lacking, I'm not gonna lie, but it's not bad. It's got good range, decent power, like good frame data, good knockdown. It's just not really lacking in too many areas. The biggest weakness really it has is that it travels kind of slow across the stage, and it's easy to strafe around it. So you want to make good use of your bomb and pods and try to go for punishes with needle, but I don't know, man, this just has to be basically the best gun. The biggest weakness I would have to say for the needle gun is just the fact that it can't knock down metal grapplers in one hit, and the fact that metal grapplers are probably like the most commonly used robos in the metagame right now. So it makes it difficult to really go in sometimes, but because you can play with it at the mid-range and not really get punished and go for your chip damage, that makes it to where its shortcomings can be overcome. It's very hard if you want to play the Shrike to deal with metal grappler, though. I will say that much. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to say about needle gun, but I really don't think so. It's just an insane gun, and if you're new to custom robo, I definitely would recommend like 100% use needle as you're trying to learn the game, because it's just absolutely insane. Pretty much if you have metal bear and needle, you can just play football and run up on them and shoot them and not even know what you're doing, and probably do better than you would with any other type of build in the game. But anyway, that's been my list of the top 8 parts in custom robo. Go ahead and leave a like if you want to see more guides and comparative content and things like that. Alright, I'll see you later, guys. Peace.